All right, can you name all 50 states?
Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho.
I was very excited to do this podcast. That answer just went so many different directions. No, let's not get into that. Well, let's get into it.
Can I just say, for the amount that you did, that was extremely impressive.
Thank you.
You actually know them all like that fast, at
Yeah.
that speed.
I've been saying them since like second grade.
Oh, because it's part of the song.
Yeah, and then I've taught it to my kids, so I had to teach them without song form.
You teach your kids like Alabama, like that?
No, but it's just like in my brain now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's impressive. Guys, welcome to another episode of Strange Flavors. This is brought to you by Alif Theory. My name is Faras.
My name is Amber.
And SHAH-AMEER is actually not with us today. As everybody knows, there's a big snail march going on in D.C. So he's leading efforts to that. And, snail lives matter, snail rights. So,
go ahead, Snaily. Do your thing.
Do your thing. Totally a valid excuse.
We're rooting we're rooting for you from afar.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everybody listening right now is definitely with you and on your side. So
yeah, so go support the snails.
Yeah, thanks everybody for supporting everything that the snails stands for, and it's just an incredible movement. Like,
I know, I'm so impressed with it. Impressed with SHAH-AMEER.
With all the crazy movements nowadays, like it's hard to keep track of them, but this one just surpasses
definitely
all of them. But and very at a very slow rate,
right?
As you would expect a snail march.
But there's just so many.
There's so many, and I feel like the attention for this country needs to be on what's going on in the snail community. So,
right.
Yeah, great movement. But yeah, guys, thanks for listening to another episode of this. If you don't know by now, we are on the podcast app, on the Apple Podcast app. We're on SoundCloud. We're on Stitcher, and we're on YouTube.
Check us out.
Subscribe to us. Follow us. Leave us a nice review. It helps us out. And yeah, thank you everybody from all the different countries that are listening. We just got done watching the Grammys.
How you feeling for us? If you follow me on Snapchat, sorry, I had to do a selfless promo.
Very salty.
But I just recorded Frost's reaction to Bruno Mars winning not one, not two, but 3 Grammys. But mostly,
it's not about Bruno Mars.
I understand, but it's just funny that he won all 3 of the ones that you wanted other people to win.
It's like, okay, here's the deal. Like, usually there's, you have a favorite artist, right? Like, you really want somebody to win. For me, that's not how I view any sort of award show, really. I mean, I always have a favorite. Like, I'm like, I want this person to win, but I think that this person deserves it based off of whatever the criteria for that specific award is.
Right.
And I think you guys know that if you have been listening since our Christmas episode when we were actually making predictions, right?
Right.
So, like, I was like, okay, anybody but Bruno in these like certain categories. It's not, and again, it's not about Bruno. Like, he's great, he's awesome, but
you need to really stop referring to artists by their first names. Earlier, he was like, hey, Zayn's at the Grammys. I was like, Zayn who? He's like, Zayn. I was like, which Zayn? He's like, Zayn Malik. I'm like, you have to refer to...
Because that's the only Zayn I care about.
Continue.
But yeah, like, okay, so for Record of the Year, like, I really wanted Childish Gambino to win. For Redbone, I feel like that is, for me, Record of the Year is like, what is the song that just, made a statement, or like not even made a statement, but just like was like that song that everybody's listening to, that like is crafted super well on both a producer side, a writing side, and a singing side. And it was just like that. I mean, Story of OJ was great. Even Humble, but like I didn't think Humble was Record of the Year, but I thought Damn was Album of the Year. But like, come on.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't care. I'm not gonna talk about this anymore. I'm upset about it. Whatever.
It's okay. It's just funny because you said this even in that episode where you were like, yeah, I hope that Childish Gambino wins for Redbone for this, and you didn't even care if he won Album of the Year because you were cool with him not winning it.
I don't think his Awaken My Love was Album of the Year, but I think Redbone was Record of the Year.
Right.
Album of the Year I could have been okay with Story of OJ. I wanted Damn to win by Kendrick.
Okay, but like, can we just focus on the important things? How
Cardi
great
B.
was
Cardi
Cardi
B. I knew
B
it. I knew
at
it.
the Grammys? Like, that girl, she is not only cute, she killed it. And then she came back in the middle of the song, added a little bit of Bartier Cardi in there. Hey.
Cardi's great.
Amazing.
But you make me not want to like her.
No, I probably make you like her more.
No, that's not true. But speaking of award shows, the Oscars are coming up. Mm-hmm. They just announced all the nominations. Did you get to see any of them?
No, I didn't.
The only important part is, well, there's like two important things.
Okay.
But one, Kumail Nanjiani got a nomination for The Big Sick for screenplay, which, yes, like, all right. And then number two, Get Out got hella nominations,
nice.
but including one for Best Picture, which is obviously like the most important award of the night. But I just wanted to say, like, the whole, when Kanye at the Grammys was calling out Taylor Swift, and then he had a whole thing with, I forget who it was. It was like that one white dude that won an award over Beyonce, I think, again. Oh. But he was like about to get on the stage again, Kanye, a second time. But
I don't remember.
But I forget who it was, but Kanye was saying things about him, like he didn't deserve it, whatever. And then he hadn't even heard the album. Mm-hmm. But then he apologized for it later because he's like, it was playing in this restaurant and I actually thought it was like dope. Mm-hmm. So for that same thing, I feel like there's this pop culture around Get Out that, like, this group that doesn't usually watch the Oscars, right? Like, there's people that religiously watch the Oscars, and then there's people that are just like whatever about it, and then there's people that are just like, I don't care much for the Oscars. But now there's going to be this group that is watching the Oscars so that they can see Get Out win, right? And so if Get Out doesn't win, I don't want that group of people to be like, the Oscars are trash and this and that, which I think would happen if it doesn't win for whatever. But do you get what I'm saying?
No, I totally get it.
Because they don't usually watch it, right?
Right.
But I feel like
if they're
to
going
understand,
in with just that intention to see them win, then of course they're going to.
I feel like if you want to have a fair argument, if Get Out loses for things, which it will probably, you should watch the other movies as well, so that you can understand where they're coming from. And if you don't usually watch Oscar nominated movies, because there's some movies that people make so that they can have it nominated for the Oscars. It just feels like an Oscar movie. Okay. If you're not into that, then you're not going to get it in the first place. Because the Oscars is not just like, yo, what did you like? It's like, what was literally like the best costuming? What was the best sound? What was the best lighting? So you have to consider all those things when you're watching a movie. And I'm like a movie fanatic. And so I've been trying to watch like literally all the Oscar nominated movies, like the big ones. But there was one that the most recent one I just watched, it was called the 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. That's like a weird name. But there was a quote from that I really liked that I wanted to share. It's this guy, and he's talking, he's like about to commit suicide. And so, well, he does, but it's not a spoiler, I don't think. Actually, it's a huge spoiler. But I don't really care. All right, spoiler alert.
After the spoiler's
already done. Nobody's going to watch it. I don't care. This guy who's commits suicide, he leaves a letter to his wife. And it says, I'll see you again if there's another place. And if there ain't, it's been heaven knowing you. Isn't that cool? Actually, it sounds like mad corny when I read it back. He said it cool.
It's cute.
He said it cool, but it sounds kind of corny now. I take it back.
No, don't take it back.
No, I don't like that I read that quote.
Why? Does it make you sound weak?
No. No. It just sounded corny now that I said it. Whatever. So somebody was having this like poll on Instagram, right? Okay. And when you see the results of a poll and then you're like upset about the results.
Okay.
Have you ever had that?
Yeah.
You're like, no, I don't agree with this. So there was somebody that was asking, the elements, as in like Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I thought you meant like elements of matter, but go ahead.
Well, those are the only elements that matter.
Oh, whoa.
So,
whoa.
I know. Poet. So like air, air, water, earth, and fire. Okay. And he's asking like which one is the most powerful?
Air, water,
fire, or earth? So
Okay.
so he had a poll of this,
Right.
and I strongly disagreed with the results. But like, what do you think is the strongest element?
I mean, I'm tied between earth, air, and water. I'm gonna say
So fire's
air. Yeah, fire's out
out. Okay, why air?
because you need air to breathe. Like
No,
oxygen.
no. Okay. You're not thinking of it in the right way. Like,
Okay.
yeah, you need air to breathe, but like, what's the most powerful?
Okay, powerful.
Yeah,
Then fire. Because
fire.
that's like the only thing that can like destroy.
No.
No?
Water can destroy.
Water
tsunamis
can destroy.
and all that.
That's true.
Listen, here's the fact.
Okay, you-
water is the most powerful. And that's he said Earth.
Was
Okay.
fire the answer? That
No,
that
there's
won?
there's no answer.
No,
It's
was
like-
fire the one that won though?
no, Earth is.
Oh.
Well, I don't know if it was winning, but he was just like, if everybody that picked water, like, you're an idiot. Like, it's not the strongest. But like, I DM'd him, and I was like, listen,
were
like,
this
you don't know what
into
you're
it.
talking about.
Okay.
And we had this debate going, like, forever, pulling out facts from everywhere. So, like, okay, let me try to help you understand this.
Okay, please.
Okay, you said fire, right? Mm-hmm. All right. What is the one element that's in all the other ones? Well, I guess it's not in fire, but water is in the air, right?
Right.
Then it's in the earth, like it creates life.
Right.
And then what's the last? Oh yeah, water. Obviously,
Right.
it's in water. But water can put out fire too.
Right.
So I was like, okay, and we're made of water. Mm-hmm. So literally, like, if you're talking, he's like, we need to think of it in a battle sense. Earth is the strongest. Because he's like, I can use like the metals and the rust and the lava in the earth and this and that. I was like, yeah, but like I could literally like, take the water from inside of you and just like
Dehydrate.
explode you.
Explode you.
Yeah, from the inside.
Okay.
Right? So, and he's like, I forget what he said, but pretty much it ended with, I showed him a picture of, like the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. Like, so like there's this rock creature that he literally looks like a rock.
Actually, I said without actually knowing what the
You don't know if
Fantastic
it,
Four.
okay,
No,
it's
I
like a
don't.
Marvel movie.
Okay.
SHAH-AMEER, I miss you.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
He literally looks like a rock.
Okay.
Like imagine a guy that looks like a rock.
Okay.
Okay.
With the face.
No face, just the
It's a rock.
it's a rock.
Okay.
It's just all rock.
All right.
And then have you seen Aquaman from the Justice League? You've never even seen like a trailer of it?
I'm not really into superheroes. I'm so sorry.
Oh my god. All right. Well,
Can we just talk about Cardi B some more?
Cardi B's not in this. Cardi
But
B
if
doesn't
she
even have-
was a superhero, I'd watch her.
Oh my god. All right, anyways, it ended with Aquaman versus The Rock. Like Aquaman is obviously more attractive, and so water because he's Aquaman, and then he's like, bruh,
Right. I
So
think
he
you're
lost.
biased though.
why?
Because you're like into Aquaman. You've been into Aquaman. You chose Aquaman inside of if
Yeah, but
superheroes
no,
were
no.
brown.
No, but like Aquaman. Well, that was only because, and I didn't choose him. Like I was given it. Like our friend Saad, who's like very much into superheroes, is like, yo, for us, he got me an Aquaman shirt, and it was because of the hair. Like
Okay.
he has long hair, so then it was like, all right, you get Aquaman. I was like, whatever, okay. So yeah, but the water argument, I was like that. I brought in Aquaman after the fact. So, anyways, never mind, Amber. You don't even.
I'm sorry.
You don't even like that stuff. So okay, I don't know if you heard this over the news, but do you know who Vince McMahon is?
No.
He's the like the chairman of the WWE, which is wrestling,
Okay.
like fake wrestling.
Okay.
Like super
No,
like the
I know-
entertainment wrestling,
right,
like
no,
John
no, I
Cena.
understand.
Okay, all right. I got to make sure with everything. Okay. Wait, do you like while we're discussing the intros in the beginning, do you usually just like nod and say like to everything? Like I need
If
to
it's
know
something
now.
that both of you guys know what you guys
You just
are talking.
pretend to know.
I mean, unless I add to the conversation. I'm just kidding.
This
isn't
just in,
true.
Amber has been faking her co-hosting the entire time.
Unless we're talking about Cardi B.
Oh my god. Do you guys see why like I want to dislike Cardi B now, even though I don't have a problem with her?
Listen. If you stop talking about superheroes so much, I'd be listening more.
Vince McMahon,
I'm sorry,
chairman
care
of
about
the
real things and real
WWE,
peeper.
chairman of the WWE, which you may or may not know. I don't know because
No, I do. That's like the
we don't
whole-
know that, though.
That's
We
like
don't know
chair
that.
over the head type stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Okay.
Okay. He came out with a video saying that he's starting something called the XFL, which
Okay.
is the NFL, but a different league for football.
Okay.
Yeah. And in it, he wants like a different rule set that's kind of made by the fans. And he wants like, you know, his own teams. It's completely separate than the NFL.
Okay.
So, you know, like totally different rules and stuff. Like one of the rules is like, he's done this before. He did it like, I think like 19 years ago or something. I forget what the year was, but he tried it before and it failed.
Okay.
And like one of the rules in it was like, there's no punting.
Okay.
Like you scramble around for the ball at the beginning, and whoever gets it like gets to keep it.
Okay.
But yeah, anyways, it's like, but the issue is that Vince McMahon is like buddy with Donald Trump, and so like one of the rules that like that they're talking about is like everybody has to stand for the national anthem.
Skirt.
I'm like, you want to make an entire league for this one? Like, it bothers you that much?
Oh,
this has to be a joke.
And he'll probably have a lot of support from it from like Trump supporters too.
Yeah, but also a lack of support from everybody else. Like,
True.
I hope, I don't know, but like, you know, that maybe black people won't ever join this league. And
Hopefully not.
what's any sports league without black people? Like,
Right.
they make it, you know, like
Right.
every NBA team, every NFL team, like it's impossible. And so unless, you know, they get that paycheck, then it's like,
Yeah.
Ooh.
And it could be like a healthy paycheck that they're missing out on too.
because then it's like, if people don't, those players that don't make the NFL or, you know, coming out of college, they're super good, or like they don't get enough playing time in the NFL, they could.
Okay,
go
but
over.
like, why is this guy buddy with Trump? Can we just like X
Rich,
him out?
old, rich white guys.
Can we
like,
just
I don't
like
know.
skirt? Bye.
Yeah, but I don't know. That's his idea. We'll see where it goes. If it actually happens, maybe it'll be a
like
fail
a
again.
shitty idea. I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to curse, but it just seems like a terrible idea.
I don't know. Well, it could be a good idea because I think you need multiple, like, in business in general.
Right.
Like you can't
If they were
have
having
one
a
person
whole football
monopolizing.
thing, and that's cool. I liked the idea up until
Yeah.
you brought up the fact that he's like buddy with Trump, and one of the rules is that because that just seems like he's just trying to pull things.
And
in
Trump
his
could very
favor.
well, like, you know, advocate for it.
Yes, even though
during
he
his
shouldn't
presidency.
be doing things
yeah.
like that.
He's going to be like, oh, we have a nice league over here
Mm-hmm.
where they're doing this. And so we'll see who it's funded by and how it's being funded. But there's real people out there that are like, yeah, I haven't watched a single NFL game this season because of this, because people are protesting.
Oh,
Bro, like, it's
bye.
football.
Literally.
And he's saying, like, I don't
They're
want it
the
to be
ones
political.
mixing politics
But
with
they're
football.
making it political.
Right.
You know? And then, you know, everybody's like, oh, yeah, Martin Luther King Day, which was this past Monday, right?
Past Monday.
Past Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, Martin Luther King was a great guy. I don't know. What was Martin
how
Luther
you-
King going through?
Yeah, and these people, if they were alive during Martin Luther King Jr.'s time, they would not be for him because most of the people
No.
weren't.
They would not.
But they're over here now, like, oh yeah, great
Great
job.
guy, yeah. But here's people silently protesting, and that's still a problem somehow.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess we can introduce the guest now, since it's been enough time of me talking about things that you don't get or care about.
If you talked about Cardi B, I'd be listening.
You're done. You're absolutely done. We have a pretty awesome guest on the show today, guys.
Super excited.
She's somebody who has experience with a lot of different psychological disorders and can help us not only understand what she went through, but educate us on, like, you know, how to sort of perceive people that may have them, like your friends or family that you may know for so long, but also not know what they might be going through, whether they have a disorder or not. But yeah.
We are welcoming Jess Leonard.
Oh, also, I forgot to say, because this is going to be a weird transition, but like my sister will be joining us for the interview.
Yes, she will be, and it's great.
Yeah.
Come on, Neha.
Come on. So everybody please welcome Jess Leonard.
And Neha. Woo.
Daughter, what you tell me my power is
About the way
looking
we
bright.
colors and
Man,
stuff like that.
read the game, but I love my bride.
Millennial
pink.
I want to let you finish that thought real quick before.
I don't even remember where I was.
I've never heard that color before.
Is that what you're wearing right now?
No.
Oh.
I'm wearing like coral, but millennial pink. Amber, how did you describe it? It's like a kind of.
It's a baby soft pink.
Yeah. It's a little bit faded, but
It's like grayish.
And
a
then
little
she
bit
said about
muted.
grayish.
yeah,
and that threw me
grayish.
off.
Yeah, that's like an older term. It's like when you take well, it's what it sounds like gray and beige, and it's actually a really nice neutral. Like I always think of nail
So
polish.
like throw up.
Yeah, the color your cat makes sometimes when it vomits.
The color your cat makes?
When it yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on your cat, but yeah. Well, I mean,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Hey, you started the vomit thing, so
I mean, that's what I thought of, but how did you make it here onto this podcast?
So it's like a long story with the how I got to Baltimore thing, but I took career and life development with Neha, and she came up and on the last day and was like, "You sound interesting." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so flattered because I thought you were super cool." And I'm like, she's,
Oh, you doing promos for us?
I was like, "Somebody likes me." And she was like, "Would you like to do the podcast?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
So to back it up a little bit, I had the class too. We had to do like a group.
Yeah.
You know, like an activity. And for ours, we pasted like a blank sheet of paper on everyone's back. And you had to go around and write something positive on everyone's back. And at the end, you have like this whole list of things that everyone said, but you don't know they're writing.
Mm-hmm.
And on her back, I wrote like, "Hey, every time you open your mouth, whatever comes out is super interesting." And that's when I was like, yo, you're really cool, because she was so comfortable in what she was talking about. It like really inspired me. And the coolest thing about it was like, we had only known each other for 3-4 days, because the class was 4 days long.
Yeah.
And
So-
what is the basis of these things, these interesting things that you say? What is?
I always kind of felt like this would disqualify me from being a good therapist or getting into the field, but mental illness runs in my family. I have rapid cycling bipolar 1, which is the really severe, least fun one to have.
Rapid cycling bipolar 1.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, which is about as much fun as it sounds. But I also have wicked PTSD from like, and I'm sure we'll get into this, from like 20 plus years of trauma, just nonstop, different kinds.
Okay, so real quick, what's the difference between like regular bipolar and, well, what is regular bipolar disorder, and then what is the rapid? What is it? Rapid cycling.
Rapid cycling.
Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So there are actually a couple different types of bipolar. There's like cyclothymia, which is like really low grade ups and downs. Usually you just have like depression, sometimes like little spikes in mood, called hypomania. There's bipolar 2, which it used to be considered less severe. Now I think it's kind of its own thing. And that's where you have the depression, and hypomania, which is like a lift in mood that's different from just being happy or like the depression going away. So you might be more productive, but it doesn't really usually get to the level where it's dysfunctional or you need to be hospitalized or anything. And then you have bipolar 1, which is, to be diagnosed, you have to have like, and there's a time, like minimum time length for this stuff, but you have to have depression and at least one manic or hypomanic episode in like, I don't know, 6 months or something. I can't remember the entire criteria, but with mine, I would just basically stay up and not sleep. Like, I always think of Fight Club, where the space monkeys are describing Tyler Durden, and they're like, "I heard he only sleeps 1 hour a night." And that's actually a pretty good descriptor of what mania was like for me.
Oh, really? Like the Fight Club?
Yeah.
And
actually.
you want to be a psychotherapist? Is that right?
Yeah.
And so, do you feel like you have like a better understanding when you're dealing with patients, or what is the concern that this would come into the way of your work?
Well, there's the stigma, like, for a long time I had been misdiagnosed as having major depressive disorder, which is its own animal, and, you know, it's really severe. And friends and family knew. I was pretty open about it. And then as soon as I was properly diagnosed with bipolar, it was like the perception went from, oh, she's just sad, to like, she's going to run out into the street and stab somebody in the face, which... It's like I became a different person to them just based on a label. So
Who's them?
Friends and family.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and these were people who had known me for like 10, 15, 20 years, so that was just weird for me. But my whole thing was, you know, I've always been transparent about it, writing about it, talking about it, because I don't see any shame in it. And I was concerned, like, are people going to be freaked out about it? If I'm their therapist, do you want a therapist?
Well, what
who
is there
has
to be
these
freaked out
issues?
about? Like, what are some of the symptoms? What are some, like, on a daily basis, or even like whenever it happens? Like, what do you go through?
Like during a cycle or like an episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, there was the mania, like not sleeping, wildly creative, like just florid mania.
So you're super creative then?
Super creative,
Okay.
don't sleep, really talkative, really confident.
And this is like positive?
Yes, there's euphoric and dysphoric, and that's like a whole different classification that I won't get into.
Okay.
But then there's also the depressive side, which mine tends to lean more toward that. And again, I haven't had like an episode in a couple years because I was lucky enough to get the meds right on the first or second try.
And what happens then? What are you feeling?
Stable.
Okay.
I don't have the highs and the lows. For a long time, I just felt flat. I wasn't as creative, and sometimes I do kind of miss it because if you ask, I mean, most people who have bipolar, they're going to tell you mania feels amazing, but the problem is when you have that drop off into depression and the lows are so extreme that it's almost unbearable, and bipolar disorder actually has an incredibly high suicide rate.
So what were the lows like?
I was still functional, like, and I think I was lucky because of that. I could still get out of bed, but general numbing, crying a lot over nothing, crying a lot over like old trauma triggers that I hadn't quite pinpointed yet, just not really wanting to do anything, you know, that classic lack of motivation.
You talk about like trauma as a very big part of your life.
It really is.
Yeah, so is it okay to get into that a little bit and just kind of go back and figure out like where this all started from?
Yeah, definitely.
Hydrate yourself. Let's
Yes.
take it back. I want to know, you know, what did this come from? And what are some of those things that sort of like, I think more than just the bipolar, there was other things that you wrote to us about that you went through. So let's go through some of those things. Where did this all sort of start?
First of all, I'm an open book, so anything you want to ask, I'm cool with.
Perfect.
I've talked about it, written about it, almost to the point where I'm desensitized. Like, I can just talk about it like it happened to someone else, and that's where the dissociation comes in. But I did not have a happy childhood. My mother is an alcoholic, and she's bipolar, unmedicated. I was mostly raised by my grandmother and my grandmother's sister, who I consider my parents, and they're both dead now, so it's, you know, weird being 28 and having dead parents. No one can really relate. And it was like that when I was growing up. Like, when you're not raised by your mother, I don't even know who my dad is. You know, you kind of have this feeling of always being on the outside. So yeah, my mother was pretty absent. How
old are you right now when all of this is happening?
When all this is happening, my earliest memories are like when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, it started really young. So like I remember kind of a revolving door of boyfriends she would have. Some of them were, you know, okay with me. A lot of them were not. So there was that, plus the alcoholism. I remember she got pulled over for a bunch of DUIs with me in the car. And those charges just kind of stacked up. And then one night when I was, I want to say like 7 or 8, she got into a fight with my grandmother and basically beat the hell out of her. And that was when she got arrested and got sent to prison, where she was for 2 years. Like, when I say prison, I don't mean jail. I mean like state correctional facility. And she had been in and out of ones in our hometown for like the DUI stuff. Before that, so it was nothing really new, but I don't know, it was just a weird adjustment. And one of my aunts would take me down like twice a month. This was like a 3 or 4 hour drive. We would go on a Saturday, and I would go visit my mother in prison, which was a super weird experience too, just really surreal.
Well, what do you think as like a 3-4-year-old going and seeing your mom like behind bars? Like, what?
I was like 7 or 8
okay
when that happened, but I don't know. I didn't know how to process it at the time, so I don't think I really felt much of anything. I know there were days when I didn't want to go. I was like, it's Saturday. I just want to stay and hang out. I didn't have very many friends by that point because, you know, parents talk and, oh, I don't want you hanging around that girl. Like, her mom's a drunk, her mom's in prison.
And what was, like, your view of your mom at that point? Did you think she was a bad person? Did you know what she was doing?
I knew what she was doing, but I don't think I really had much of a concept of good or bad. I missed her, certainly, at that age, but at some point, you know, when you don't see your mother for a couple years and then, you know, don't see her in person for even longer, you just kind of disconnect. And I had one aunt who moved back. She had been living in Chicago. And when my mother went to prison, she moved back to live with my grandmother and help take care of me, and she got guardianship and all that.
So now that's sort of like when you're, I guess, in elementary school.
Yeah.
And then so what's middle school and high school, especially when you're transitioning as a person growing up, what are you thinking, and are you sort of facing any sort of like psychological repercussions because of all this?
I started, I think, having really bad bipolar symptoms when I was in middle school, actually. I just remember feeling, there were a lot of days when I would just, like on a Saturday or something, I would know my friends were doing something and they'd invite me out, but I didn't want to go, and I'd just sit in my room and look out the window and think, you know, life's going on and I'm not a part of it. I started sleeping a lot. I would sometimes get manic spikes, and back then it kind of manifested as irritation, and you know, my family wrote it off as being a teenager, but I kind of cycled through that way, mostly depression all through high school. And you know, I was a shy, kind of withdrawn kid, which I don't know if it was my nature or, you know, bullying and all that stuff. But then I got to undergrad and I decided no one here knows me, no one knows my story, I'm just going to reinvent myself. So I forced myself to be outgoing and be this open person and talk about everything. So,
before that, did you ever, like, to cope with it, did you get into drugs, or did you, like, were you having thoughts of, like, suicide or anything? What was going on in your head?
Definitely thoughts of suicide, but I don't think more than, you know, the average depressed teenager would have. No drugs. At that point, I was still like, I'm never going to smoke, I'm never going to drink, I'm never going to do this or that because my mother did it. So I had like this really staunch, like almost teetotaler thing going on.
Did you diagnose yourself? Did you go to somebody? Did you get help? What happened?
When I was 18, I finally was like, something is not right, something's going on with me, so I made an appointment to see a psychiatrist. And that was when I had my first diagnosis, and they said, the depression's a symptom of PTSD. And they put me on, I want to say it was Prozac, like generic Prozac, really low dose.
How were your peers or your family reacting?
My family was not cool with any of it.
Like you going to a therapist? Me
going to a therapist, me being on meds, any of that stuff, because my family is very much rug sweeping. They're pro at that. I have one uncle who actually died by suicide when he was in his 20s, and I know basically nothing about that because no one will talk about it. No one really talks about the fact that my mother is bipolar, or that a lot of relatives are showing symptoms. So yeah, no one really addressed it. And then when I started being more open and vocal about it, they were not having it.
What helped you make it as far as you did up until the undergrad phase when you're actually getting help? Like, how did you hang on?
Stubbornness, I want to say. I really don't know. I remember a friend of mine back in the day saying, life is like a book that sucks, but you want to keep reading just to see what the ending is like.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, you know, and I'll always remember that. But that was kind of what got me through, just, you know, and I was always very creative. Like, I play the piano, I used to paint, draw, write. So that was an outlet.
And now, when did the disassociation stuff start?
Oh, that one. Yeah, that's interesting. So I had like a flash of it when I was about 8 years old.
And can you quickly explain like what disassociation is?
The forms I have, or the form, I guess it's lumped into one. It's called depersonalization/derealization. And the depersonalization is this feeling of otherness. Like, I'm talking to you right now, and I know I'm forming the words, and I'm aware they're coming out of my mouth, but I'm sort of experiencing from this slightly outside place, or like I'm moving my hand and I recognize it as my own, but it's almost sort of a dreamlike, foggy state. Like if you've ever been really sleep deprived and you know that out of it feeling, that's what life is like for me, like 24/7, and it has been for the last going on 6 years.
Does that make you hypersensitive to things?
Yeah, I'm super hypervigilant. I startle really easily. I've been working on it, and I'm not as jumpy. I'm more chilled out and laid back, but I definitely still have that startle response.
What would you say to people who think, or is this a difference between like multiple personalities? Like, how do you explain that?
Yeah, for sure. So dissociative identity disorder, it used to be called multiple personality disorder. That's like a whole other can of worms to get into. But
So it's not that.
No. It's very different. Like, your reality testing is intact. Like, if you ask me, to state what day it is, what time it is, where am I, I can still do that. Whereas, there's no hallucinations or delusions. So I know where I am, but everything kind of feels surreal, or like this, like topsy-turvy, through the looking glass type vibe.
And you said this happened starting 6 years ago. So can you tell us how you first started realizing that?
Yeah, so, well, it became chronic 6 years ago. I had a couple episodes before that. And when it started, I remember the first time very, very clearly. I had gone into the bathroom to fix my hair or something. I was 18 at the time. And I remember looking in the mirror, and when I had met my own eyes, it was like I was looking at someone who was and was not me at the same time. And it was a very strange, very disturbing feeling.
That's poetic AF.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Looking in a mirror for anybody.
Yeah.
That's me, but not me. But for you, it was the reality.
Yeah, and I felt something not snap inside of me, but I got this sense of being, of otherness for the first time.
Was it painful?
Psychologically? It was confusing.
Okay.
I freaked out. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't have a word for it. I asked my psychiatrist at the time about it. He wasn't familiar with it, which is part of the reason that I talk about it so much. It's, even mental health professionals have no idea what it is or what it looks like, because it's not, it's in the DSM, but it's just not widely understood.
So how does it make anything for you difficult? What are the challenges with having it?
Being present. I get caught in my own head a lot, and just being able to draw myself out and bring myself back to the moment so I can enjoy being with people or enjoy what I'm doing, instead of this constant feeling of numbness or being somewhere else.
Yeah, talking about being with people who are throughout this, people that you have relationships with, whether it be friends, boys, whatever.
From when it started?
Yeah, what are people do you have friends through this, or are they just come and go when they realize it?
I had a couple really solid friendships with a couple of girls that I had known for a really long time. At the time when it happened, and I feel like this was a huge contributing factor, I was dating a guy who was abusive in every possible way. And I started to notice this disturbing pattern, after we'd have a really big fight, I would have flashes, and they would only last a couple minutes. One of them happened when I was driving, and that was terrifying. I was 18 years old.
What do you mean you'd have flashes?
Flashes of being disconnected. It was very different than my, in touch with everything reality. I would be an observer outside of my own body while still being in my body. Mm-hmm. The myself but not myself thing. It was very strange and very disturbing and terrifying at the time, because like I said, I didn't have a word for it. I thought I was going crazy, for lack of a better word.
Did you associate that with being normal from your childhood, after seeing sort of the abuse and everything there, to your own relationship? Did you care? Did you know it was wrong?
I had a sense that it wasn't normal, and this is always a really funny thing that I think back on. When I was taking psychology, I think it was Psych 101, in my senior year of high school, right next to my desk on a filing cabinet, there was this poster about warning signs of abuse in relationships. And, my relationship had started to really go south at that point, but I looked at this and I'm like, no, that doesn't apply to me. And then I looked back and I'm like, yes, it totally applied to me. But I think I was so desperate to be loved and accepted by someone that I just kind of glossed over the less than perfect moments.
So you're in a relationship right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, and your boyfriend is
Fiancé.
here with us? Fiance. Okay,
Yeah.
wow.
Ooh, put a
Congrats.
ring on it. Right?
I get the wife upgrade.
So, what are some of like the things that he has to be proactive about and he has to consider when he's dealing with you?
I think the main one is, like, I take a lot of naps. I'm a nap person. I love to sleep. He's learned that when he wakes me up, you can't just go up and like shake me awake, because I've actually woken up screaming that way because I get startled so easily. So that's really the main one. But other than that, I mean, I've gotten so used to it. Like, this has been my normal for almost 6 years, that, you know, he didn't know me before I was constantly dissociated. So it's not like there have been any major adjustments. Just being aware of the little things. Like, for some reason, if I get a loud noise on my left side, it'll make it spike a little bit and become more noticeable, because again, I kind of have that general feeling of disconnect, but it's not something that I dwell on.
I think there's like this stereotype sometimes that whether we see it in like horror films or like we hear about these disorders, most of us aren't friends with anybody who has like you know, I guess like extreme cases of these things. But like what would you say to people that like, you know, are meet you for the first time and like you tell them like that you have these types of disorders or whatever, and like they don't think that you're gonna like flip on them or something, or like you're gonna be 5 different people at the same time, or like, you know how we were talking about Fight Club, like
Yeah.
that's kind of I guess how you
Perception
visualize
of
it.
Yeah. I guess first of all, what I'd say is you probably do know somebody who has a severe mental illness. They're incredibly common, but most people don't talk about it because it freaks people out. They don't, I mean, there's just that misinformation. But whenever I share something about it, like when I was in career and life development over Intercession, I shared it in the group, but immediately I was like, but it's not a psychotic thing, you know, I'm just trying to make it very clear that the reality testing is there. And I realized that that's problematic too, because it's stigmatizing the forms that are more psychotic or more severe, more, I guess, florid. And the people know, like, I always think of Sybil, like Sybil and Dorset and everything, the one everybody knows.
And then what's the latest one that came out?
Split. I haven't seen it, but it,
Would you go see it, or do you want to see it?
I think I would want to see it just to see what it's about, but reading the synopsis, it made me go, you know.
Split is like mad scary. If you don't know anything about like psychological disorders and then you go see Split, I'm sure you're gonna be like, yep.
Oh, God.
If anybody ever says they have anything, I'm not gonna be. I mean, that goes for like anything.
Yeah.
And then like when these labels were kind of given, like was it like an answer to you, like, oh, this is what's happening, or like how do you feel about like all these labels now of having these disorders? Is it a positive experience? Is it negative?
I've always felt the words have power, and it was nice to have a word for what I was experiencing. And with the bipolar thing, I had known my entire life that my mother had bipolar, I guess. She's still around. And whenever I would act out or something, the default thing that would be thrown at me by the people who were raising me was, you're just like your mother. And that was really damaging to hear. So my entire life, up until I was formally diagnosed when I was 24, was, you know, I might be depressed, but at least I don't have bipolar. And then when I got that diagnosis, my thought was, my God, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's like this thing happened, you know?
So when that happens, is there like any tricks that you have to like help either calm yourself down or get you back to a place of like stable like mental health? Like, do you have any things that you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm really a big fan of grounding exercises. Like there's one that I really like called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you go in your head and you look around the room and you name either out loud or to yourself 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and then 1 good thing about yourself. And that last one can be hard sometimes, as it is for everyone, but that is
That's
good at
a
bringing me back.
Cool exercise just to do it as anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's really good. I'm going to be leading some groups at my internship site soon, and substance abuse is one of the common factors between all the clients, and I'm planning on closing out group with that every time because it's very useful. Back before I knew that one, I would just walk around my apartment and touch things just to kind of reorient myself.
Before you started learning as much as you know now about psychology, did you ever think about spirits or ghosts or the devil or God when you were experiencing any of this stuff?
Not really, actually. I mean, I like the idea of ghosts in general, but I don't know if I believe in that.
How about religion? Like with God, and did you ever
nothing like
associate
that.
anything?
No.
Are you religious or do you believe in anything?
I'm an atheist, but I kind of lean toward an agnostic view almost. You can be both, I think. Like, I personally don't believe, but there could be. There's room for doubt. There's room for the possibility that I'm totally wrong.
Do you feel like you chose your career path so you could kind of understand yourself better too and like search for answers through studying?
I think a little bit, but mostly I just find it really interesting because my own experiences have been so out of the left field and so different from anyone else's that I know.
Do you know anyone else or have friends that also go through these disorders or have them?
I do not. I have one really good friend back in Wisconsin who is also bipolar. But other than that, no.
You mentioned that like you've been to a lot of places. You said you're from Wisconsin and like you've been to other places. Why do you travel so much?
I'm from Iowa originally.
What's in Iowa?
Not a whole lot. I'm from a city on the Mississippi, like 55,000 people, really small. I moved to Wisconsin in 2012, then made my way into Madison from a 1-stoplight town. And then...
For what? Why are you going from state to state?
Just to get out, try something new.
Okay.
Yeah, and then my now fiance in 2016 got accepted to Hopkins for, yeah, I know. And he was like, do you want to come with me? And I said, yes, please get me out of the Midwest. So that's why I ended up down here, and here we are.
How did you two meet?
We met on Tinder.
Oh,
Wow.
It works?
Yes.
Yeah.
what? I don't know
love that.
anyone that has like gotten married off of Tinder personally.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How did you have to explain it to him? Like your whole situation, like was that an awkward thing to do or was that something that you're used to doing already?
I definitely put it out there all up front.
Okay.
Because I had gone through so many, not quite relationships. They didn't get to that point where, people would bail, be fair weather people. And I'm like, you need to know, first of all, I've got bipolar, so things might get a little rough. I'm medicated and everything, but, second of all, that type of thing.
What was his reaction?
I can't remember. What was your reaction? He was just
Apparently
kind of
a
like,
good one.
he was like, everybody's got something. So,
I mean,
yeah.
apparently it was a good reaction because you guys are getting married now.
Yeah, yeah. He just kind of took it at face value. And
What do you look most towards marriage? Like, what do you look forward to?
actually because I was married once before, I conveniently left that out. And it was just a wreck. It was a train wreck beginning to end. I'm looking forward to someone who doesn't stonewall me. Just a good, healthy relationship. I mean, we're solid. I know everybody says, every couple fights, but I think we're both pragmatic enough, or he's pragmatic and I'm detached enough from my emotions that I can
say you're both pregnant.
Perginat. Are you guys familiar with that?
What's that?
I don't know.
The video of like 30-some misspellings of pregnant. This guy runs Perginat.
Oh,
Is the one that comes to mind. No. Yeah, we're pragmatic. So, if there's an issue, we just work it out, but we're both pretty easygoing.
You write yourself.
I do.
You have a blog?
I do.
Yeah, you want to shout out your blog?
Yeah. So it's called the Dissociated Press, which I thought was clever years ago, and it just kind of
Nice.
stuck.
Awesome.
But it's the easiest way to get there is facebook.com/the Dissociated Press, because my URL on WordPress has been the same and really convoluted for years. I haven't gotten it together enough to get a proper website for it.
Cool.
But
And what do you write about on there? Just your experiences and everything? Or like,
I do. Lately, I've been focusing on mindfulness, just sharing my experiences in therapy, especially now that I'm doing EMDR and some inner child work, which sounds, you hear inner child thrown around a lot, but when you look at it in terms of trauma, it makes a lot of sense. I like to share news stories about things that are relevant to the field, whether it's like medication developments or this is a new study. These are things that we've made connections with. Like, I think they're working on isolating genes for PTSD or some vulnerability predictor.
so you kind of
which is
give your
really cool.
view and
Yeah.
stuff on that. Cool.
Yeah.
And are you currently in therapy?
I am, yeah.
And do you think you will be in therapy for a long time, or do you think you'll do it forever? Or
I don't know if I'll do it forever, but I definitely have a lot to unpack.
okay.
And I'm okay with that.
Cool. We'll link your blog in our bio. But
Very cool.
before we leave, is there anything that you want to say? Kind of a message that you want to leave for everybody listening?
I guess just realize that, there's a human face to every issue. People think that these issues are scary. I don't think I'm really all that scary. And I always...
We don't know that yet.
Yeah, I don't look scary. Well, I
No,
might
you
look
don't.
scary. Boo. But I always find people's reactions very interesting when I share these things. See if they recoil, see if they're surprised. Some people are very welcoming. I'm going to appreciate the disclosure. But it tells you a lot about a person when you share something so personal.
Cool.
Great.
Amber?
If you could be any flavor, what would it be and why?
This is something I thought about a lot. I think it would be like violet flavored hard candy, like the flower.
Violet flavored?
Yes.
What's
Okay.
violet flavored?
It's very strange. I mean, you would have to...
Like grape?
No, no. Like the flower. And if you're into floral flavors, like in tea or something, it's pretty close. It's a really subtle flavor.
Are you supposed to eat violets? Like,
No, it's I
You
get
can.
what you're saying with the
Yeah.
tea flavors.
Yeah, when you said the
It's
tea,
like a
it helped
scent?
It's a scent and a
it's like
flavor.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, like,
Imagine
very
a tea.
calm.
It's almost a little bit
Okay,
perfumey.
why?
okay.
It's a weird flavor. It's obviously not everybody's gonna like it, but once I'm trying to figure out.
I'm thinking
how
of
to
Charlie and the
start why.
Chocolate Factory. The violet.
Violet, you're
purple.
turning violet. Yeah, it's weird, but it's unique and it draws you in and
Acquired taste.
It's an acquired taste, yes, but it can be very refreshing in its weirdness.
I like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
We'll go with that.
Okay.
Violet.
That sounds like an outer flower experience.
Yeah.
Trying to connect it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Jess, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast
you.
Thank
and
you so
sharing your
much.
story and your experiences. It was really fun, and I hope that everybody listening right now learned something from this. And thank you all for listening to another episode of Strange Flavors. It's been another week, another flavor, a little less stranger. We'll talk to you next time.